My parents told me they'd added my sister to my investment account to help the family. They expected her to access my savings. I calmly smiled and said, "That's interesting. I moved the money months ago. Hello everyone. Thank you for 100 subscribers. We just reached 100 subscribers, and I truly couldn't have done it without every single one of you. Your support, views, likes, and comments mean the world to me. Here's to the next milestone together. Thank you all. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and my parents tried to give my younger sister access to money that didn't belong to them. They didn't ask. They didn't even warn me. My mother simply smiled across the dinner table and proudly announced, "We added Daphne to your investment account, so if she ever needs money, she can access your portfolio." The room became very quiet. Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to explode. Instead, I calmly took another bite of dinner, swallowed, smiled, and quietly replied, "That's interesting, because I moved every dollar out of that account almost 6 months ago." My sister's fork slipped from her hand. My father's face turned white. Mom stopped smiling. Looking back, that wasn't the moment everything changed. It was simply the moment everyone realized I'd seen the problem coming long before they did. I was the oldest of 2 daughters. My sister Daphne was 4 years younger. Growing up, she was charming, funny, the kind of person who could convince almost anyone to help her. Unfortunately, that included our parents. Whenever Daphne wanted something, she usually got it. A new car, a vacation, help with rent, money for another business idea. The answer was almost always yes. Whenever I needed something, the answer sounded different. "You've always been responsible. You'll figure it out." At first, I thought they believed in me. Later, I realized they simply expected me to need less. After college, I became a financial planner. Ironically, helping other people build wealth became my career. Every paycheck, I invested automatically. I lived modestly, avoided unnecessary debt, read investment books during lunch breaks. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund went toward my future. I wasn't trying to become rich overnight. I simply wanted financial freedom. Slowly, it worked. Year after year, my investment portfolio grew. Nothing flashy, nothing risky, just patience, consistency, discipline. Meanwhile, Daphne's life looked very different. She changed jobs often, started businesses she quickly abandoned, bought expensive things she couldn't comfortably afford. Whenever money became tight, Mom and Dad quietly helped. One Christmas, Dad joked, "Good thing one daughter knows how to make money, and the other knows how to spend it." Everyone laughed, except me, because it stopped being funny years earlier. Eventually, the requests started coming my way too. "Natalie, Daphne just needs a small loan. Natalie, can you co-sign something? Natalie, family helps family." Each time, I politely declined. "I'll help her make a budget. I'll help her find work. I'll help her understand investing." But I wouldn't hand over cash. Mom always looked disappointed. "You care more about money than your sister." "No, I care about making sure money doesn't destroy our relationship." She never understood that answer. 2 years later, I reached an important milestone. My investment portfolio crossed 6 figures. I didn't celebrate publicly. Only my financial advisor knew, or so I thought. A few weeks later, Mom casually mentioned my investments during Sunday dinner. "So, how's that account doing?" I looked surprised. "It's doing fine." She smiled. "Daphne says you've done really well." I turned toward my sister. "I don't remember discussing numbers." She shrugged. I guessed. Something about her smile made me uncomfortable. That evening, I called my financial advisor. "Has anyone besides me asked questions about my account?" He hesitated. "There have been a few inquiries." My stomach tightened. "What kind of inquiries?" "Someone claiming to be helping organize family financial planning." "Did you share anything?" "Absolutely not." "But..." It made me recommend something. "What?" "You should update every security setting." The next morning, I did exactly that. New passwords, new security questions, new contact information. Then, after discussing everything with my advisor, I transferred my investments into newly established accounts under updated ownership records and security protections. The original account remained open, only because closing it immediately would have complicated several automatic transactions. By the time everything finished processing, the balance in that account was barely enough to buy lunch. I never mentioned it to anyone. Life quietly continued. Months passed. Then, Mom invited everyone over for Father's Day dinner. The entire family came. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Halfway through dessert, Mom tapped her glass. "I have wonderful news." Everyone smiled. She looked directly at me. "Natalie, We solved Daphne's financial worries. I frowned. What do you mean? Mom smiled proudly. We arranged it. Arranged what? She laughed. You'll be so relieved. We added Daphne to your investment account. So if she ever needs help, so she'll have access. Every sound in the room disappeared. Dad smiled nervously. Daphne looked strangely confident. I quietly placed my fork on the table, then calmly asked, which investment account? Mom blinked. The one with all your savings. I smiled gently. That's interesting. She frowned. Why? I leaned back in my chair. Because I knew something they didn't. 6 months earlier, every dollar had already been moved. Sometimes, the greatest protection isn't a locked door. It's quietly preparing, long before anyone realizes they were planning to walk through it. As my parents waited for me to panic, and my sister confidently smiled across the table, I realized they had absolutely no idea what was about to happen next. The dining room was silent. Every eye remained fixed on me. Mom smiled confidently. Well, aren't you going to say something? I calmly folded my napkin. I already did. She frowned. What do you mean? I looked directly at her. I transferred everything out of that account 6 months ago. Her smile disappeared. What? The account you're talking about has almost nothing in it. Dad leaned forward. That's impossible. No, it's accurate. Daphne laughed nervously. You're kidding? I quietly shook my head. I'm not. Mom looked completely confused. But why would you do that? I answered honestly. Because someone started asking questions about my investments. I realized it was time to increase the security. The room became very quiet. Dad asked, what kind of questions? My financial advisor received calls from someone pretending to be involved in family financial planning. Mom immediately looked toward Daphne. Daphne looked shocked. It wasn't me. I calmly replied, I never said it was. Silence. Then Mom quietly admitted, I called. Everyone turned toward her. She swallowed hard. I only wanted to know how everything worked. You pretended to represent me. She couldn't deny it. I thought, if something ever happened to you, the family should know. I looked at her gently. If something happened to me, my estate plan already explains exactly what would happen. She stared at me. You have an estate plan? I've had one for years. Dad rubbed his forehead. We didn't know. You never asked. No one spoke. Finally, Mom whispered, but we already completed the paperwork. I frowned. What paperwork? She slowly pulled an envelope from her purse. She slid it across the table. I wanted to surprise you. Inside were unsigned forms. Forms she'd hoped I would sign. Not completed documents. Not legal authorization. Simply paperwork she'd prepared without discussing it with me. I quietly placed them back inside the envelope. You never had access. You never could. You simply assumed I'd agree. Mom lowered her head. I thought, because Daphne was struggling, you'd understand. I smiled sadly. I understand she's struggling. I don't understand why nobody asked me. Dad looked embarrassed. We handled this badly. Very. Then, for the first time all evening, Daphne spoke. I didn't ask for this. Everyone looked at her. She quietly wiped away tears. I asked Mom for advice. I never asked for Natalie's account. She turned toward me. I would have been embarrassed. I am embarrassed. I believed her. Because for the first time, she wasn't making excuses. She looked ashamed. I reached across the table. I'll still help you. Hope filled her eyes. Really? Yes. I'll help you create a budget. I'll help you pay off debt. I'll teach you how investing works. But I won't hand you money. She slowly nodded. I think, that's what I actually need. Grandpa quietly smiled. Now that's financial planning. Everyone laughed softly. The tension finally began to disappear. Dad looked at me. I'm proud of how calmly you handled this. I smiled. I learned that from managing other people's finances. He chuckled. No, you learned it because you've always been the responsible one. I answered gently. I'd rather be the respected one. He nodded. I understand. Mom looked at me through tears. I'm sorry. I let my worry for one daughter become unfairness toward the other. I reached over and squeezed her hand. I know you love us both, but love still needs boundaries. She quietly whispered, I'll remember that. Epilogue. 3 years have passed. Daphne never asked for my investment accounts again. Instead, she asked questions, real questions. How do emergency funds work? What's an index fund? How much should I save every month? Slowly, she built her own financial security. One step at a time, Mom stopped trying to solve everyone's problems with someone else's resources. Now, whenever she worries, she asks first. Instead of assuming, Dad jokes that family dinners have become financial literacy classes. He's not entirely wrong. Sometimes my nieces and nephews even sit beside me with notebooks. I don't mind, because teaching someone how to build wealth is far more valuable than giving them a check they'll eventually spend. As for me, my investments continued growing, not because I chased shortcuts, because I stayed patient, disciplined, and prepared. Every year, I still leave exactly $8.50 in that old account. My financial advisor laughs whenever he sees it. Why keep it open? I smile. It reminds me of the day I realized the best investment I ever made wasn't in the market. It was learning to protect the future I'd worked so hard to build. My thoughts. Looking back, trust is one of the most valuable things we ever give another person. It should never be assumed, and financial boundaries don't mean you love your family less. They mean you understand that healthy relationships are built on respect, honesty, and consent. Helping someone become financially independent is a gift that can last a lifetime. Giving away your security without being asked or without agreeing isn't generosity. It's losing the very foundation you worked so hard to build. Sometimes, the strongest yes you can give your family begins with a respectful, confident no.